I'm Mark Halperin.
And I'm John Heilemann. And with all due respect to Pope Francis, the world is definitely getting hotter, but you're pretty hot yourself right now. Okay. Happy National Eat Your Vegetables Day, sports fans. In our lineup tonight, Bush broccoli, Trump turnips, and Pope potatoes. But first, Clinton cabbage. A handful of new polls in general election battleground states provide a snapshot for the Clinton campaign. And that picture looks like it's been taken, with that Instagram filter that's kind of brown and gray. Let's go to the battleground big board, where Ohio Governor John Kasich leads Hillary Clinton 47-40 in the Buckeye State. In Pennsylvania, Marco Rubio and Rand Paul each have a 1-point edge over Hillary. And in New Hampshire, in the Democratic column, Hillary Clinton is just 10 points ahead of Bernie Sanders. All of these are worse than they were for her not that long ago. Mark, what is Hillary Clinton's problem?
Well, in New Hampshire, Bernie Sanders is doing really well with men. When people know both candidates, he's doing even better than that horse race.
Right.
I think this symbolizes, as a snapshot of today, she's still the most likely person to be the next president, but as a snapshot of today, she is being pulled left by Bernie Sanders. If he keeps rising, she'll be pulled left more, and she cannot take for granted Ohio and Pennsylvania, two states the Democrats have won consistently.
She is also slipping with women. She's also slipping with independents in some of these battleground states. It's kind of across the board. It's hard not to reach the conclusion that all of the bad stories that she's faced, all the criticism she's endured, all the pseudo or real scandals that she's mired in are finally starting to kind of take a toll on Hillary Clinton. And we've seen that number in the honest and trustworthy number previously. But now I think we're starting to see it a little bit in these horse race numbers. They're not that meaningful, we know. It's still a long way from Election Day. But there is a drag on her, and you're starting to see it in a lot of places.
She'll need independents and men in order to win a general election.
Yeah.
And if Sanders is going to drag her to try to appeal more to women and to appeal more to the left, it's going to be trouble for her, and you're going to have some of these general election states like Ohio and Pennsylvania the Democrats have won be tight. It's also great for John Kasich because an 8-point lead, nobody's done that in their home states against Hillary Clinton in these battlegrounds.
I mean, look, if John Kasich is still on the fence about whether he's going to get in or not, he's going to look at that number, and that is going to give him a good reason to get into this race. The Sanders thing is really important, too. You mentioned it quickly. When people know, the people who know who Bernie Sanders is, he's ahead of her with those Democrats in New Hampshire.
All right, the Pope says people are causing climate change. Now Republicans have to decide if they should play the climate denier card and rebuke the Pope, which could hurt them with some in the religious community and possibly get them barred from heaven. How to thread that needle? Here's Jeb Bush's attempt in Washington, Iowa today, recorded by our man, John McCormick.
I go to church to have my faith nourished, to have my faith challenged. I think Pope Francis is an extraordinary leader of the church whose teachings I try to follow, and it doesn't need to get any more complicated than that. That's why I go to Mass. I don't go to Mass for economic policy or for things in politics. I got enough people helping me along the way with that.
So, John, there are at least 5 Catholics likely to end up in this Republican field. But for all the Republican candidates, how big a risk is it for them to basically say to the Pope, who's popular, stay out of politics?
I think it's insane. It's insane to take on Pope Francis, not just because they might not get into heaven, if there is such a thing, but because he's super popular, and also because he's right. The planet is getting hotter, and you can be in denial if you want, but it's going to be very hard, I think, for someone to become president of the United States in 2016 who is a climate denier. It's just not the right. It's not in line with science, and it's not in line with where the growing segments of the electorate are, which acknowledge that the science is right.
That's why the Pope taking this position is so dangerous. You can look at Democrats who, for years, have challenged whoever the Pope was on issues like abortion.
There are moral issues. They're not scientific issues.
Exactly, and they have suffered. But in this case, the Pope putting his moral authority behind the science. Very dangerous for Republicans. I think Jeb Bush and Rick Santorum, by saying, well, we listen to scientists and not to the Pope, kind of begs the question, which scientists are they listening to, given the nature of the near consensus in the scientific community?
I mean, look, we know where some of these people are. Rick Santorum, some of these folks on the Republican side are going to be climate deniers, are going to try to fuzz it up. For Jeb Bush, this will be a real challenge because, someone like John Huntsman, who took the position that was in line with science, paid a huge price for it. Jeb Bush is trying to run a general election campaign, as we've noted. Admirably, he's trying to run in a way that could help him win a large number of electoral votes. You can't do that and and be in the category of people who try to deny the basic science on this issue.
Yep.
All right. For the National Press Corps and other elites, Donald Trump's campaign is a pure vanity exercise and a target ripe for outright mockery or low-level derision. You can see it in headlines like this one in the Washington Post. The Trump circus comes to Iowa. And the New York Daily News illustrated that very point literally by making Trump a clown. But out there in America land, and in particular the early voting states, the Donald is treated differently, like a perfectly plausible, respectable presidential candidate, that is. Take a look.
Donald Trump made it official today.
Today, Trump announced he is running for president. Trump said he wants to make America great again, and some of the things he promised to do if he becomes president are build up the military, take care of veterans, and repeal Obamacare. He says if he becomes president, he'll be a tough negotiator, as he has been in his business career, and other countries won't be able to get away with what he says they have been getting away with. He said politicians are what's killing this country, but he said he is not a politician. He's a businessman who knows how to create jobs. He also says he has good instinct and ability to predict outcomes in the future. As an example, he referenced the advice he gave about the Iraq War, and in doing so, talked about what he would do now with ISIS.
So, Mark, that's the Iowa coverage from where Donald Trump went yesterday after he announced he flew out there. There's no candidate for whom the gap between the national coverage and the local coverage is greater. How much does that difference matter politically, strategically, tactically, electorally to Donald Trump?
Matters huge because his chances of being a real player are not nationally like most everybody else. But if he can show traction in Iowa and New Hampshire, it's a huge deal. Now, look, we should say almost every campaign points to the local coverage and says the local coverage is less incredulous and usually more positive. But for Trump, the gap couldn't be bigger, and I bet you people in Iowa watching local news have a much different impression than people who read the daily news.
Again, what's interesting, though, is we know from polling, and we'll see if this changes now that he is actually in the race. He thinks it will. We know in places like Iowa, New Hampshire, local, who see local news, they still have he has very high unfavorables with those voters. A lot of them will say they would never vote for him. Again, the question now that he's legitimately in the race, will it change? Okay, after the break, our reality TV interview with the man in question, Donald J. Trump, billionaire. From global warming to marijuana and his hair, we did it all. And that's next.
There are a few cardinal rules of journalism. You always got to double check your sources. Get to press conference early so you make sure you get a good seat. And most important, if you're ever invited to Trump Tower for an interview with the owner, say yes. This afternoon, John and I sat down with the latest person to formally get into the presidential race, Mr. Donald Trump. We talked about his insecurities, his views of his rivals, and his posture towards negative TV ads. But we started out by talking about the Pope's warning on climate change. I want to start by talking about the Pope. There's a big debate in the Republican Party now about what role things he says should play. You've spoken favorably about him. He's talking this week about the environment. Should a potential president listen to what the Pope says about global warming?
Well, I'm not so sure. Look, I have a lot of respect for him. I think he's really a terrific person. I love his stance. He's so different. He's very refreshing. But I think you want to listen to science. You want to listen maybe to your own gut, maybe your own experience. I'm not sure you have to necessarily listen to the Pope as to the environment. It was a little bit of an unusual situation. No, I wouldn't say so.
Do you agree with the point, the position he's taking, which is that the Earth is getting warmer? Do you agree with that?
Well, I'm not a big believer in the whole global warming phenomena. Okay, I'm not a person that, as you probably you know very well. My attitude is that, and I feel very strongly about this. Clean air is so important.
But just on the factual question, you don't think human behavior is contributing to a dangerously warmer planet?
There could be a little bit of something having to do with factories and smoke and things, but for the most part, I'm not a believer in that, yes. And I would say this also. Our country is cleaning up, and then you look at China and other countries, and they're not cleaning up. And, why aren't they doing it?
There's an important Republican interest group that I know are familiar with, the Club for Growth.
Yes.
This morning they issued a statement saying that you should not be taken seriously as a presidential candidate. They cited a number of things that they have problems with. I'm going to ask you about two of them.
Sure.
One is they say that you are a protectionist. You said yesterday in your speech that you are a free trader. They point out that you've advocated a 25% tariff on Chinese imports.
Sure.
How can you claim to be a free trader and before a 25% tariff on Chinese imports?
Well, first of all, the Club for Growth was actually, John, they came up to see me very recently. In fact, Corey was here. And they sent us a letter, I think we have it, asking for a tremendous contribution. That's interesting.
Yeah.
In fact, I was shocked by the amount of money we're talking about. So that was wonderful. Second of all, I do believe in free trade, but only if you have smart leaders. And with China, it's not free trade. We don't have free trade with China. I love free trade, but it's got to be free trade and it's got to be fair trade. It's got to be where everything's equal. It's not equal.
People are really interested in your personality. A lot of people, I think you've heard this, think you're arrogant or too confident. Some people say you're hopelessly insecure, and that's why you act the way you do. Are you insecure about anything?
Maybe it's a combination of both.
Are you insecure?
Everyone's insecure.
What are you insecure about? Your looks, your personality, whether people like you?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think of myself as insecure. Probably we're all insecure. You know, maybe insecurity is what makes you successful.
Right, but be introspective. What are you insecure about?
Well, it is my hair.
Yeah. You love your hair.
Like it or not, that's okay. Hey,
right, so what are you insecure
better than most.
What are you insecure about?
My chipping. Okay?
In golf.
My chipping.
Yeah.
Look, it's not a question of insecurity. I feel very confident. I went to the Wharton School of Finance. I was a good student. It's like one of the hardest schools in the world to get into. I then do a book called The Art of the Deal. It's the #1 selling business book of all time, or just about. You may say, oh, there was one that sold 2, but, you know, just about. It's still in the schools, everything else. I then do a show called The Apprentice. In the meantime, I build this incredible empire. It's got a tremendous net worth, very little debt. And then I hear some pundit or some person say, he doesn't deserve to be on the stage with a senator. The senator is nothing. And I'm not saying, or senators are nothing, I'm saying certain people are zeros. And I'm not supposed to be on the stage with these people? I mean, give me a break.
Because you've never run before, most of the people in this race have, people are wondering how you're going to conduct yourself. I just want to ask you about a couple things.
I don't know.
Will you run negative television ads against your opponents as common in politics?
I don't see it. I'm not so sure I'm going to do that many ads. People know what I am and they know who I am. I'm a very, I've been acknowledged. Business Week did a story and they said, I guess, a poll of their readers, and they rated me the best negotiator. So I don't say I'm a great negotiator.
Let me pin you down this. You said you don't see it. Will you run negative television ads against other Republicans?
I might.
You might.
I might. I don't know that I will, but I might.
Yeah. And if you did, what would be off limits? What wouldn't be off limits? Would you just run them on policy, or might you run them on their finances or their personal stuff?
I wouldn't do personal. No, I wouldn't do personal. I would probably do policy. I'd probably do maybe the past. I've had a very good past. I've had great success.
You've been critical, for instance, to Jeb Bush on Common Core and immigration.
I am very critical.
Could you imagine running negative ads against him?
I could see that. I don't know that I do that.
People for years doubted how rich you are, and you were right. You
much richer than they thought.
Yeah. People want to know, how much of your own personal wealth will you spend on this campaign?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, it depends. Look, I'm an intelligent person. I would say that it could be that my campaign doesn't resonate. And I'll call you guys and I'll say, John, Mark, it's not working. I'm not so proud. I'm proud, but I'm not so proud. And I'm certainly not stupid. And it could be that it's not resonating. Right now, I think it's resonating better than anybody ever thought possible. You look at Facebook, you look at all the things that's happened. They just had over 3 million in Twitter, I was just informed. Right. I have a very...
But there are people less wealthy than you who have spent tens of millions of dollars.
Mitt Romney, for one.
Mitt Romney. Will you spend, if it's going well...
I'm going to spend millions. I'm going to spend many millions. Well, I will be up to tens of millions in the not-too-distant future. It's very expensive running a campaign. Now, the advantage is I have an automatic Air Force. In fact, there's one of my planes, right? I have a nice Air Force. Nobody's going to travel like it. But I actually save money, because all I have to do, I have to pay for the fuel. It's sort of cheap. Good. It's actually cheaper than renting planes. Sure. But, no, I expect to spend tens of millions of dollars. I'm also a business person. Instinctively, I'm a business person, regardless of the kind of numbers you've seen. Right. Because I have far more money than Bush. They're saying Bush raised a lot of money, although less than they thought. I raised more money than anybody by a factor of many, many times. But I'm not because I'm, instinctively a good business person, I'm not going to throw money away. If I think I can't win, I'm going to call you guys and say, fellas, I think I did a pretty good job.
Are you committed to going all the way through Iowa?
I would be totally committed unless I see for some reason I'm not going to win. I do believe in polls. I had a good poll in New Hampshire the other day. And again, it'll be very interesting to see after this, because most of my negativity in polls is because people think I'm not going to run. They say, you're not going to run. And who's going to vote for somebody if they think? They really don't think I'm going to run. Now, they're all thinking, wow, he's actually running. But we had, before yesterday, we had I guess we were in third or fourth place in New Hampshire, and I haven't done anything yet. So, yes, I'm committed to go all the way, but again, if for some reason it's not working out, what's the purpose?
So you heard Mr. Trump there reference a dispute with the Club for Growth. He gave us, after the interview, this letter that shows that the Club for Growth that attacked Trump yesterday, made fun of him as a presidential candidate. They recently, a couple weeks ago, hit him up for a $1 million contribution.
June 2.
Some dispute between the two sides about whether Trump initiated the meeting with the Club for Growth or whether the club did. But either way, lots more on BloombergPolitics.com. Our colleague Sahil Kapoor with a story, and this is an evolving thing. The Club for Growth versus Donald Trump. Watch BloombergPolitics.com for more on that. Coming up, the more fun half of our interview with Donald Trump, his position on drug legalization, and a very special message for Mr. Neil Young after this.
Now the exciting, scintillating second half of our interview with Donald Trump. When we left off, I was just about to ask Mr. Trump about one of my favorite passions and causes, legalizing drugs. In the past, you have expressed the view that the way to deal with the war on drugs is to legalize drugs. Are you still in favor of legalizing drugs?
Well, I see so many things. I look at the Colorado situation with the marijuana. It's very interesting because over the last little while, a lot of bad things are happening up there with respect to people's health and the effect that it's having on people. I am not in favor of the legalization of drugs.
So you're no longer holding that position.
I don't know if I was ever. I don't know if I was ever.
You came out and said that you were in favor of legalizing drugs.
You made it okay to change your mind. There are a lot of people. That's true, and I've changed my mind on different things. But there are a lot of people. I don't know that I've ever said that, but I would take your word for it. I would say, generally speaking, just sitting here right now, they're a terrible thing, and probably I would not be in favor of the legalization of drugs. But, there are two sides to it. The one thing is you clean up the whole thing, and you do, but it really is I look at what's happening to the inner cities. I look at what drugs are doing it's so bad. And there are some great people. I have some very conservative friends that are totally in favor of legalization of drugs, and I have some that are totally against it. Probably I am inclined to go against.
You've suggested that Governor Bush, Senator Rubio, Senator Santorum, Carly Fiorina are all losers, people who shouldn't win and can't win.
I don't think I used that name.
You did about some of them, but
I did.
But yeah, I think so. But you've all suggested all of them either shouldn't be running or won't win because of things they've done or positions they've had. So I'm just wondering who in the race do you respect? Who do you think has a good chance to win?
I'd rather not have too much say because I don't want to build up people that I'm supposed to be running
against. But Scott Walker,
right?
for instance.
Well, he came up to my office a few weeks ago, gave me a beautiful trophy, which is upstairs. If you'd like, I'd show it to you. He gave me a beautiful plaque, and because I helped him actually. But he's got a lot of problems in Wisconsin. Wisconsin's got tremendous problems.
Which
I like
ones are you talking about?
The debt and the difficult problems that they have going on in Wisconsin that a lot of people don't understand and know about. Tremendous borrowings, and they have difficulties.
So is there anybody in the field you look at and say, boy, that person's got a great record, they're really formidable?
Well, you mentioned Carly Fiorina, who I don't know, I don't think I've ever met her. She was viciously fired, viciously. This wasn't like a normal fire. The reason I know about it, because, it's not my world, but she was viciously fired.
About firing people, though.
I do. Yeah. I'm very good at firing people, but I don't like firing people. Actually, people don't know that. I really don't like firing people, except if it's on The Apprentice. But Carly Fiorina was viciously fired from Hewlett-Packard, walked out, and then ran against Barbara and lost in a landslide.
So there's another
and then you say, well, wait, and then you say, oh, that's okay, now I'll run for president. I don't like that. Rick, who I really have gotten to know, he's come up to see me twice in the last couple of months.
Santorum.
And he's really a nice guy, Rick Santorum. But I tell him, I say, look, you were a sitting senator in Pennsylvania. You lost by 19 points, which is like a record. And now you say, okay, I lost by in the history of the Senate, I think they said for a sitting senator, lost by a record, 19 points. Now you say, okay, now I'm going to run for president.
Rick Perry, Mike Huckabee, both of them. Are they good
Rick
candidates?
Perry, I thought he had a really bad run last time. And you know what? I don't know him well, but I had dinner with him once or twice, and he is really a fine person. And I like him a lot, but boy, that's a tough deal. He had a rough time, and I think he's going to have a hard time getting over that. And I'm not just talking about the ups. I'm talking about I think he's going to have a really tough time getting over that. I like Mike Huckabee a lot. I did his show. I don't know that his show would have continued much longer, unlike The Apprentice.
We were sitting there yesterday as you came in, made your entrance, came down the escalators
Yes.
there. I was enjoying listening to Neil Young.
Right.
Love that song, love that performer. But I did think to myself, I wonder what Neil Young's going to think. He's pretty liberal. I'm not sure he's. I'm not sure he's going to love this.
He's a friend of mine.
Use of the song. So, what did you think when he came out very quickly and said, "Please don't use my song"?
I fully understand.
Donald.
He's a very liberal guy.
Yeah.
And we actually, have the rights to the song through whatever mechanism it is.
Right.
But I wouldn't do it. He called me. I spoke to him 2 days ago. He called me up. Nothing to do with the song. He called me to say hello. I love Neil Young, and he loves me.
Yeah.
We have a great relationship.
Yeah.
But our politics are exactly the opposite. He is on the other side.
So you're saying Neil Young calls you as a friend, but then when you use the song,
Well, he really did.
But then when you use the song, he came out and said, "Donald, don't use that song."
I went to see Neil Young last year. I think it was like Carnegie
Hall. I was there.
And it was great. I think he's fantastic. And he came up to my office after he said, "I saw you in the audience. I'd love to meet you." And I said, "Absolutely." He came up to my office like whenever that was, the day after the Carnegie Hall. I'm friendly with Neil. He called me 2 days ago just to say hello. Nothing to do with the song. Then when we put the song out, and along with many other songs, it was background. Basically, it was background music. But we put the song out. It wasn't Neil. Neil's manager called, and he said to Mike, "Neil really likes Donald Trump. But would it be possible for him not to, because Neil's politics are very different." And I heard that, and I said, absolutely.
Well, he's endorsing Bernie Sanders, which is not really your politics.
Who, by the way, is doing very well.
Yeah, indeed.
Bernie Sanders is doing very well.
Last question, based on keying off your Atlantic City roots.
Right.
What are the odds that Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States?
I asked that question to a lot of people. What do you think? What do you think? A lot of people are saying we're going to do. Look,
give me some odds.
We're doing well. I'm running against political people that do it all their lives. I've never done this before. I don't do this.
50 to 1?
I would say anywhere from 10 to 20%.
10 to 20%.
I mean, I think from 10 to 20%.
So you're an underdog. First time in a long time you've been an underdog.
Well, no, I've probably been. When my father said, "Don't go into Manhattan, don't go in,"
That was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
When I did The Apprentice, they all said, "Trump." I'll never forget. I read a critic, and the critic said, before the show went on, the critic said, "Donald Trump is doing a television show?" That was an underdog. When I did a book called The Art of the Deal, nobody thought it was going to be such a big book. It became one of the biggest. So I'm sort of, I consider myself many times.
But you're telling me if I can get 10 to 1 odds, because you're saying 5 to 1 is like the worst. If I can get 10 to 1 odds on you, I should make it.
I think you should.
I should go put some big.
I'll tell you, John,
take those odds.
One thing I can tell you, I'll be trying. And I always tell people, I give speeches on success, and they say, "Would you speak on this or speak on that?" Or friends of mine come, "Can you speak to my son about what he should do?" Never, ever quit. I don't quit.
We reached out to Neil Young to find out whether he, in fact, really loves the Donald, and just to talk to him because he's really cool. But he's out of the country, couldn't respond, so we're going to go listen to Sweet Home Alabama and A Rock of the Free World during the commercial break. We'll be right back. We are always on 24/7 at BloombergPolitics.com, where if you go right now, you can catch the latest in the Donald Trump Club for Growth death match.
We're on twice a day at 5 and at 8 Eastern Time. Until tomorrow, we say to you, thanks for watching. See you tomorrow, same bad time, same bad channel. Sayonara.